All right, so for the first box, we have n squared. And what would go in this box here? What is n times negative 2? Negative 2n. And then negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So when you combine your like terms, which would be these two, you have n squared minus 4n plus 4. All right, and this square here, when you see 3x minus 2 squared, that means we're multiplying it against itself. So 3x times 3x would be 9x squared. 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. And then you have a positive 4. Again, these are like terms, so your final answer would be 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. All right, any questions about the bell work? Let's go ahead and go to our notes packet. Finish out chapter 11. This is our last chapter. We have our second quiz in a few weeks, and then we'll start getting ready for our final. So in your note packet, go to page 10. So now we're going to talk about factoring. Factoring is the opposite of multiplication. So when we distribute, let's look at this first one. So this is what we did before break. We distributed the 3y, and we would multiply and get our answer. But when you factor, you're doing the same, you're doing the opposite. Instead of multiplying, you're dividing. So factoring is dividing. Instead of multiplying, you're going to divide. And what they did here was they divided by your GCF, which in this example is 3y. They divided by 3y. And that's how they got that answer, 2y plus 5. So this process, go ahead and fill this in. When you're dividing, this process is known as looking for the greatest common factor. Who's heard those three words before together? Greatest common factor. You've heard of that? Okay. And it's also, we just also call it the GCF. So go ahead, take a minute, fill that in on page 10. All right, so let's go ahead and look at some of these examples together. On page 11, what would be the GCF? So we're going to look at it. We have numbers. So my numbers are 6 and 8. And then for variables, for x, I have x to the third and x to the fifth. Notice that I had to separate that. I'm looking at them separately. So for 6 and 8, I'm asking for the largest number that divides out of both. So what would be that largest number? What's the largest number that can go into 6 and 8? 2. Because 6 can be written as 2 times 3. And 4 can be written as 2 times 4. And what they both have in common is a 2. That's why it's called a common factor. So my GCF, we're going to start off with the 2. And when I look at my x's, I'm going to go with the lowest exponent. So my lowest exponent is going to be my GCF. My lowest exponent is 3. This has the lowest exponent. So my GCF would be 2x cubed. So find the GCF. My GCF would be 2x cubed. That is my greatest common factor. All right, let's look at this next one. We have a 12, and I have 16. And then I also have a squared, and I have a. So let's look at 12 and 16. This is where knowing your times table, it really does come into, it helps a lot. And I can make copies of the timetable if you all would like your own copy. But 12 and 16, 12 can be broken down to 4 times 3. 16 can be broken down to 4 times 4. So what do they have in common? 4. So my GCF is going to start with a 4. And then I have to go with my lowest exponent. So I have a squared and I have a1. Which one is lower? a1. So that's what I'm going to put in my GCF. a1. So that would be my GCF. My GCF would be 4a. All right, so now let's go ahead and do this one again. So this is actually going into what we just did, because this one had 12a squared and 16a. So we already figured out that the GCF was 4a. So in our next example, let's go ahead and use the distributive property. So we already know my GCF is 4a. So we're dividing them both by 4a. And when I divide it, the 4a goes on the outside. You're going to write what you have left over inside of the parentheses. So pick up your calculators. Take 12 divided by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. And you're subtracting your exponents. So 2 upstairs, 1 downstairs. 2 minus 1 is 1. So you have 3a to the first. Carry down the addition sign. 16 divided by 4 is 4. When you subtract the a's, you don't have any left. So this would be your answer. So we're doing the opposite of what we did before Thanksgiving. Instead of multiplying, we're dividing. The first step is to figure out what your GCF is, though. All right, so let's look at this next one together. When I look at my numbers, I have 14 and 5. They don't have a number in common. Can you divide 14 by 5? No. So my GCF would just be a 1. So far I have a GCF of 1. And when I look at my G's, I have G to the 3rd and I have G to the 5th. Remember, you always go with the lowest G. So this is what I'm going to use. So my GCF is 1g cubed. So now we're ready to take that 14g cubed plus 5g to the 5th. You're going to divide them both by your GCF. The GCF is on the outside. Go ahead and tell me what would be left inside. Remember, you're dividing the numbers and subtracting your exponents. So 14 divided by 1 is 14. And then when I subtract the g's, I don't have any left. Bring down the addition sign. 5 divided by 1 is 5. When you subtract 5 minus 3, you have 2. That would be the answer I'm looking for on your next test. All right, so let's go ahead and do this one here. So I have 3 numbers. I have 2, 6, and 8. What's my GCF? What can I take out of all of those? 2. Yep. Because 2 can be, this can be 2 times 1. 6 is 2 times 3. And 8 is 2 times 4. GCF has to come out of all of them. They all have a 2. So my GCF so far is 2. So now when we look at our x's, can somebody close the door for me? Thank you. I have x cubed, I have x squared, and I have x. I have to go with the lowest exponent. So what's my lowest one? X to the first. Yep. So that would be my GCF. My GCF is just 2x. So what I want you to do now is take that 2x cubed plus 6x squared plus 8x. Go ahead and divide them all by 2x. So you're going to have 2x on the outside. And then tell me what you have on the inside. There should be a trinomial left inside. You're dividing the numbers and subtracting the exponents. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. What do you get when you subtract your exponents? 3x's minus 1x is how many x's? X squared, good. Bring down the plus sign. 6 divided by 2 is 3. When you subtract, you have just 1x. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. And that would be your final answer. All right, just 2 more and then we're done for today. So you're going to, we're on page 11. So the first thing you're going to do is look at your numbers. So I'm looking at, first I'm looking at my x's, my numbers. So I'm looking at the 6, the 18, and the 21. So 6, 18, and 21. Don't say it out loud. This is the hardest part. Is you have to figure out, this is where knowing your times tables, if we don't know them, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle, and I will pass out some tomorrow. You need to tell me the number that goes into those three. There is a number that will go into all three. Just give me a thumbs up when you know the number. I just need to see how many of you all can figure out that number. So far, I got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. 7. That's not half. Anybody want to volunteer that number? What'd you get, Stacy? 3. 3 is the number. So when we have 6, 6 can be written as 3 times 2. 18 is 3 times 6. 21 is 3 times 7. So what they have in common is a 3. Now, as far as x's though, do you notice how this 21 doesn't have an x? So what it really has is x to the 0. When you don't see an x, it's because it's no x's. It's x to the 0. So that means that my GCF does not have an x. My GCF is just a number. It's just 3. Or if you wanted to say 3x to the 0, you could. But because it's no x's, we usually just leave that off. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide everything by 3. So 3 is on the outside. Go ahead and divide it out and write what you would have left on the inside. So 6 divided by 2, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And it's 2x squared because we have to keep both of those x's. And then you have 18x divided by 3 is 6x. And 21 divided by 3 is 7. All right, last question. For this last question, now we have 2 variables. So let's start off with the numbers though. So first let's talk about 12 and 8. So we have to figure out the GCF of 12 and 8. So that would be the largest number that I can divide into 12 and 8. Show me with your fingers if you know that number. 4. Yep, good. It's 4. So this is 4 times 3, and this is 4 times 2. So my GCF that I can take out is a 4. So far I have a GCF of 4. Now let's look at our x's. Remember, we can only go with the lowest power. So I'm going to highlight those in blue. So x to the first, x to the fourth. What's the lowest exponent? So I have 1x and then I have 4 x's. I got to go with the smallest. So that would be just x to the first. Good. So just x. And then we also have y's. And because they both have a y, we can take that out also. So y3, y1. What's my lowest exponent? y1, good. So we're going to take that out. So this is my GCF, 4xy. So take a minute and I want you to divide both of these by 4xy. And then tell me what's left on the inside. So remember, you're dividing the numbers and subtracting your exponents. So 12 divided by 4 is 3. So notice that when I subtract the x's, they cancel out. So we don't have any x's. What about y's? How many y's will I have? Show me with your fingers. How many y's? Yep, just 2. So there should be 3, and then you have y squared. Carry down the addition sign. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then when I subtract my x's, I have 4 minus 1. Show me with your fingers. How many would that give me? Yep, 3. And then what about y's? Do I have any y's? Nope. And that would be your final answer. And that's finding the GCF. All right, so homework 5 is in the front by the computer. Go ahead, pick that up if you haven't already. So for today, these are the ones that I would start off with. This is due on Friday. As always, if you finish it before it's due, you get extra credit. And your next quiz is on Wednesday the 13th.